so I waited for a while to see, if a plane would fly overhead, and nothing ever did. Now, most aircraft landing or just running lights um, don't have just a single non-strobing red light,
Right.
and this was just a bright red light that just hung down the sky. So I don't know, it was a light in the sky and it was unusual. So that was probably the closest experience that I have ever had with a UFO. Now, over the years, there have been a lot of groups that really hate me because they've invited me to, say, accompany them to UFO hotspots, and because of my years of experience watching the night sky, I can identify practically every normal kind of aircraft, satellite, whatever going overhead. And these people get excited by an aircraft landing light or a satellite, something like that, and I'll have to point out, no, that's this, that's that, and then they don't invite me back again. I ruin their little forays. But when it comes to the UFO phenomena, the best thing really is to be truthful about all this. You don't want to be living in some kind of fantasy that every light that looks unusual in the sky is a UFO, or, as a lot of people want to say, an extraterrestrial spacecraft. That's one of the problems that we've had over the years when it comes to the UFO phenomena, and why scientists are loath to get involved in the research, why newspapers and the news media like to make fun of it. So, I mean, we really need to take this subject seriously and not jump every time a satellite goes overhead.
Oh, you said it so right. I've been in and out of commercial broadcasting since 1976. That's a long time. And in fact, my first show was supposed to be Top 40, but when I went there a month later to start my air shift, I walked in and they said, "Oh, we're not doing Top 40 anymore. We're now News Talk."
Oh, gosh.
And I just got out of broadcast training, and you know what? One thing I wasn't trained for was to do news or talk radio. And that's how I got my wings into talk radio. But, I'll be honest with you. I was really guilty myself. I would get callers in, and they would claim they saw little green men, or they saw UFOs hovering above their trees or over their house. And they didn't know what I was doing behind the microphone. I was sitting there, they didn't hear that part. But, I didn't believe 99.9% of the callers when they talked about UFOs. But I took a job in North Carolina. It didn't work out. And me and my ex-wife back then, were driving back from North Carolina, and we got into New Mexico. And I had a GTO. I've told the story numerous times. I was going fast because that's what the car was meant to do. And we were going through the desert, and there was no cars around. So, hey, I was going really fast. And all of a sudden, the road lit up in front of me, and the inside of the car got bright, like it hurt your eyes. And, my wife screamed at me, "You're going to get a ticket. You're going to go to jail." And I pull off the side of the road, and she's really hysteric. And the first thing I noticed, Tim, there was no sound. Now, I was in the military. I was in NAM. I know what helicopters sound like. Nothing, totally quiet. And the light was really intense. And then within a matter of a few split seconds, it was poof, gone. And I don't know what encounter that was, but I'll tell you, it was enough where I stopped making fun of people when they started talking about UFOs, and I started taking it serious.
Yeah, well, I mean, it takes just one personal experience to change your entire worldview when it comes to things like that. And there are just so many people who, much like yourself, who have they've gone through their lives, not really experiencing anything overly unusual, and then something like that happens, and it really, it opens up a whole new perspective on your life, on this world, on this universe. The experience you had, it may not necessarily have been, say like an extraterrestrial spacecraft, but that doesn't matter. It was something out of the ordinary, and it opened your eyes, didn't it?
Oh, it did. To this day, I don't know what it was. I mean, I don't know if any helicopter could have done it. It certainly wasn't a plane. And again, I was out in the middle of nowhere. All I can assume, it was something unidentified that I don't know what it was. The only thing I regret, Tim, is if they should have abducted my wife at the time.
Yeah, well, the majority of the times, though, they bring them back. So.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That maybe, that split second could have been who knows how long, right? Because people,
right.
Loss of time. Maybe they did abduct her, and then they quickly saw her and put her back in the car. Oh, well.
I've seen movies with just exactly that kind of scenario.
Yeah, so have I. But things like that is scary. Now, I took a break for 10 years out of commercial broadcasting from about 1990 to 2000, and I managed a couple camera stores. And the owner of the professional camera stores used to import in from Czechoslovakia Russian infrared binoculars, military ones, and boy, were they expensive. They were like $2,900 back them days. And I took a pair home just to play with it. And I got tired of looking at the neighbor's cat, glowing at night, or some dog running through the yard. I turned it up to the sky, and I saw all this weird stuff going in the sky, like lights going really fast, coming to a stop, and making a quick turn and go another opposite direction. And I saw stuff like that, and it really bothered me. So that following Monday, I contacted the Puyallup Observatory and talked to the director, and I said, hey, look, I'm seeing all this stuff. And the guy goes, well, we're not seeing it with our big telescope. I said, no, this is off of, Russian, infrared binoculars. And he goes, yeah. Well, can I borrow a pair to check it out? And he came in. He looked at it. I let him use it over the weekend. He came back and he said, it looks like there's a war out there in space. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, I see these lights traveling and then coming and zigzagging a 90-degree angle and going another, and if it was anything from our planet, the people would be like, nothing. They'd be gel on the walls. Next thing I know, every member of the group came in and bought them. And they were, I guess, for a long time, that was their main thing. Is stare at the skies, not with the big telescope, but with these things.
Well, yeah, the big telescope, you have to remember the focal length of something like that. You'd never be able to see anything relatively close to the Earth, within our atmosphere or just, say within orbital height. So, yeah, something like those binoculars. And, you see that a lot now. There are YouTube channels, dedicated to these people who have these infrared cameras, video cameras that can see these lights in the sky, and they're considerably cheaper than
way cheaper.
Soviet binoculars that you had. I've got an old. What was it? It's called a high 8 video camera that used that kind of night vision. That you could aim it up in the sky and look for things that are lit up, in other light frequencies. But unfortunately, I've never seen anything with it. But like your Soviet binoculars, there are some cameras out there that could really set your credit card, a folding with the expense of them. But they're really good too. So it's but it's hard to say, with the exception of some of these things that, like you said, that you saw and the astronomers saw, that would be flying along at obviously almost supersonic speed, making right angle turns, things like that. There are, I know that I have talked to military pilots who say that there are advanced American aircraft up there flying around, flying dark, with the exception that they use lights in that spectrum, in the infrared spectrum, that you could not see them at night, with your eyes. And but if you had the proper equipment, you'd be able to see each other out. So some of those could very well be some of these, secret black project technology aircraft. But obviously, they must fly either at heights to avoid civilian airlines or along pathways that civilian airlines aren't, allowed to fly. Now, saying that, some of these sightings that are being seen along those lines are obviously a lot lower than that, and so I can't imagine that any, the Air Force or the Navy or what have you that could be operating some of these advanced aircraft would risk flying them at that kind of low altitude in the dark like that. All it would take would be one accident, one slightly off course civilian airliner to run into something like that, and then there'd be a lot of hell to pay.
Yeah, well, the stuff I was talking about, Tim, was out deep in space. That's the stuff I was looking at, and that was, again, maybe it was because of the spectrum of, the infrared binoculars compared to, let's say, the lower end stuff you could buy on the street. I know that technology back in, 1990, 92, 93, that is old technology even for military. But back then, it was, state of the art. But it makes you, when you see stuff like that, again, it makes your hair stand up. And you just don't know what it is. And, I don't know of asteroids or comets that can just change patterns like that. So there's something going on. And maybe we have had a Space Force for many years, and that maybe this is a little farce, basically, what, was created now as a Space Force. Because I really look at what has been created now as nothing more than a joke. But that's just my personal opinion.
Well, now, the question I have to ask you is, how could you tell that what you were looking at was, outside of our atmosphere? Because at night, lights in the sky, it's really hard, to get a perspective.
Well, then, yeah, that's true. But again, I came back, going from what I was told even by the people, at the observatory. They said this stuff was out in deep space. So, and that's what puzzled. Like I said, every one of their members came in and dropped $2,900 for these used military binoculars. They were ordering them like mad, and they were really puzzled. In fact, one guy even wrote letters to his congressman, to you name it, and said, "Hey, what is going on?" Trying to get disclosure back then, because like he pointed out to me, he knows no comet, asteroid, or anything out there, or space junk it could be doing that.
Right. Well, and that these guys are serious if they're going to go and drop that much money, especially on an astronomer's salary.
Oh yeah. I'm sure they didn't make much money at all. Hey, we're coming up in about 2 minutes. We got to go to break, but when we come back, I want to know a little bit about your show. Then I want to touch base quite a bit about Area 51 in the past, because it's very interesting. Yeah,
it's hard to believe how long Area 51 has been in the public meme now. Here we are, 2019. People are still talking about it. One of the worst kept secrets in the world, I think, when it comes to military secrets in the United States.
Oh, yeah. Well, again, we're going to go to break here in a minute, but I'm going to say this. Do not storm Area 51. Please, don't even think about it. Like I mentioned numerous times on my show, the last person that did it several months back managed to make it onto Area 51 and came out in a body bag. So